All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine. I'm joined once again by Brian McNicoll.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
You didn't read chumps.
Chumps.
Also, after
Chumps
this,
too.
I was trying to figure out a way to work in this thing. I saw this report about Eugene Robinson from the Post, and I guess he was on MSNBC, and he said that the Trump supporters need to be deprogrammed. So I was trying to think, can we call ourselves the deprogrammables or something?
Deprogrammables.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're talking about people who need to be deprogrammed.
Yeah.
Eugene Robinson is right near the top of the list.
Yeah,
He's been wrong about everything for the last 30 years.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. All right. Well, obviously, since we last were here, we have had a lot of action going on. So we were on last Wednesday, and we knew that was the big day, that certification of the votes were going to take place. We knew that President Trump there was a rally. We knew there were lots of people in town for this rally and whatnot. And I don't think that either one of us actually expected it to turn out quite the way it did in terms of the outcome of the violence, or this whole issue that we had on Capitol Hill. But anyway, it did happen. It did occur, and it's really lit a fuse under the liberals, under the Democrats, under the media, and under some Republicans as well, elected Republicans as well for this. But so why don't you give us your thoughts here about what you feel about what's happened there and what's going on?
Okay, so it was about I guess I've read all kinds of estimates of the size of the crowd at Trump's rally. Okay, which the most sensible one seems to be about 500,000 people, which is pretty good on a weekday, work day. Middle of the week, everybody had to take like most of that week off to attend. People came from all over the country to be at it. A small group of people got into the Capitol, and they apparently were planning to do this before they used Trump's speech as a pretext. But most of them did not hear Trump's speech. So the article that the notion that he said something that incited them to they overcame their sensibilities and their passions, led them to go down and attack the House is nonsense, right? That's simply not true. There was some people who knew what they were trying to do, and they knew where they were trying to get, and they knew the vulnerabilities, and they got there. A lot of them are like failed actors and people that like any publicity at all is good publicity. There's a lot of evidence, and there's a lot of video out there that a lot of the people who were actually in the Capitol that day were let in by Capitol Police, and they were let in. They took pictures with the cops. Those pictures are all over the internet. And I've talked to a lot of people who did not understand that it was not legal for them to be in the Capitol. And you say, how can that be? It's like, if you come here to DC as a tourist, one of the things that surprises people is all the buildings that are open, all the things that you can just walk into, right? And so if the cops let them in, they may not have understood that, this was a place that they weren't supposed to be let into. Now you see it's quiet. You're not hearing much about it in the media, but a lot of the cops who are responsible for that are being held responsible. There was a big round of suspensions and punishments dealt out by Capitol Police yesterday to its own officers for their conduct in this. So a lady got shot. That needs to be addressed. It looks like it was pretty much a shooting in cold blood by the cop. If you watch the tape, she's just standing there doing nothing, and all of a sudden she's shot and she's down on the ground. And there's no provocation that you can see on the tape. I think that's someone that hopefully both sides can get behind. Cops who kill innocent civilians belong in prison. Hopefully we still have enough of a common sense of purpose as a country to where we can agree on that. I don't think that, Trump told people to come. He told them to peaceably go over there. What I think he was looking for was if you voted against him, you were going to walk out and look in the eye a bunch of his supporters, right? And he achieved that. And some people went overboard and gave the Democrats, license to accuse Republicans of all the stuff Democrats have been doing all year, right? uh, assaulting federal buildings, holding up proceedings, threatening the peace, the general peace and welfare of the country, and now it's like they're even using the same language. So when you can tell that it's aped, it's copied, it's fake, but it's like what they can do now. And of course you have, the Cheneys, who are always going to be the Cheneys. They're loyal to themselves and God knows what else. And, Liz Cheney has called for, joining in with the Democrats to persecute Trump because, that wing of the Republican Party, remember, that was the wing that he kind of turned away from, right? That wing was not producing. We were not winning, right? It was not carrying out the goals of conservatives to, guard the border, put America first, quit giving our jobs away in trade deals, right? And Trump came and did that and dismantled a lot of what they had done to America over the years, and finally put conservatism on the side of rank and file Americans. So yeah, I can understand. Adam Kinzinger has been a anti-Trumper, for life, basically. And there's one other guy, Katko from New York, who has said that he would side with the Democrats in this, which so now it's painted as a huge bipartisan effort to get Trump, and it's three donkeys that of questionable loyalties anyway. And I assume that Mary Cheney will be stripped of her leadership position. Katko will be stripped of his position on the Department of Homeland Security. We don't want a ranking member who voted against his own president. Those are going to be the tests coming up. It's like, how do we deal with the people who turned on us and our party, right? And I hope it is severely.
Yeah, so this is interesting. We'll talk a little. We'll obviously spend some time talking about this impeachment process, which is going on as we speak. But one of the problems it looks like was just that the security. In terms of Capitol Hill Police too, they really weren't ready for this crowd and for what happened. You get a surge or whatever. They just kind of let go on this, and so you wind up with the chief of the Capitol Hill Police has resigned. I think there was the sergeant of arms for the House and for the Senate. I think they also resigned. So heads have rolled in a sense, for this. And you mentioning suspensions and punishments.
And why not? Why weren't there cops arm to arm there, right? What's the reason that they didn't have it guarded up, every shift called in, right? Because, the same reason that the stores weren't boarded up downtown, because Trump supporters don't make trouble, right? They clean up their messes. They don't leave trash. They don't vandalize like the left does. They don't destroy property. They don't shoot at people, right? They protect themselves. They protect their interests. So now you have a few people who bit off from the crowd, right? These were not people who came with the purpose, the same general purpose that the other people came with, right? They had their own agenda. They left during the speech, which means the speech didn't, incite them. And, they had their own plan of what to do. And, I guess someone has said, the FBI or somebody has said that they don't think Antifa is involved. It might well not be Antifa, but it is people who did not do it to further the interest of President Trump, right? That's
right, absolutely. And
they were not on our team.
Well, yeah. There's stories about some of the people who've been arrested who really fell into some of the deeper conspiracy theories and stuff like that, and were very, very pro-Trump. But one of the things that gets me about this is just that if not for these people who first breached the security and created this havoc, the guy who steals the podium, and stuff like this, all this nonsense. They break, they get into the House offices and stuff like that. I think Clyburn said that he was missing an iPad. It also created a lot of security concerns about, no one really knows. Did anybody try to mess with anything in any of the offices, with people scattering about? On that, who knows? There's too much. There's a lot of openness that goes on there, and people leave a computer just sitting there.
Right. There's some talk that they got Pelosi's laptop.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was revealed was that her brother is a convicted pedophile. So I mean, there's a few good stories that go with it, but
and we'll always get stories out of these kind of things. But these people, I think, they were there and they were ready to agitate. They were there for kind of a different purpose, no matter whose side you want to put them into. And the end result really is, to me, is that it plays right into the Democrats' hands, the liberal media's hands, is that I do feel to a certain extent that privately that you have these far left Democrats and the far left media, looking at this situation, or at least, as knowing that there were going to be a lot of people in town and there was going to be this demonstration, hoping in a way for something like this, because then the reporting can be, yet another attack on Trump. They can just add on, here in the last couple of weeks of his administration or whatever, they can go and they can attack him and they can attack his supporters. And that played right into their hands. Those people did absolutely no good for President Trump and President Trump supporters and the cause. And that they created a lot of damage, that is going to be very hard for them to unwind. Now,
which makes it hard for me to believe that they just went there and acted independently or acted out of their zeal for Trump.
It's hard to say. I mean,
it's just hard for me to believe that this can be classified in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably question more of the motives for the people who initially breached. The people who followed, it wasn't, once a line is broken, it is like a herd mentality type of a thing. Whether or not it's a concert, a football game, a basketball game, once people start storming on the court, everybody starts storming the court, or everybody starts storming the field. So, there are a lot of Trump people who had no intention of ever doing anything like that, but then they kind of saw, and you just kind of go with the flow and go with the flow.
And if the cops are letting you in and other people are peaceably walking in, then you're like, okay, it must not be so bad, right? Because I mean, the cops are in on it and they're mugging and taking pictures with cops, and they're all these other people are laughing and smiling, and they're not, most of those people are, they're from out of town. They're going in, they're looking around, and they're walking out, right? They didn't harm a thing. Okay, you don't want that. You're not supposed to be in there, but they didn't know it, and they left without causing any damage. But there are this other set of people whose idea was to cause the very situation that has presented itself.
Right, and that has created this situation. So the Capitol, I guess, in a sense, has kind of been a lockdown situation in terms of there's a lot of security fencing now that's gone up for the inauguration, all these other kinds of things. But one of the things that just drove me crazy. I mean, we can talk about making comparisons to what happened last Wednesday, and everything versus what happened over the summer, and the disparity there. And you had Democrat leaders, including Joe Biden, saying, "Hey, if these had been blacks, people, they would have been shot." I mean, like, what is it with these guys? I mean, what's that?
Well, because look what happened though. They didn't get shot. All those months of all those people attacking those cities, right? Attacking the cities, attacking federal law enforcement officers, attacking federal courthouses all over the country, right? And none of them got shot, not one. But as soon as the cops, this cop has supposedly worked for Chuck Schumer, who actually fired the shot, right? As soon as they got a chance to shoot conservatives, they shot them in 30 minutes. They killed one as quickly as they could do it. So do not tell us that we are the bloodlust people. You are the bloodlust people. You Democrats did this.
Right. The only civilian, I mean, that was a white woman, right? I mean, she was from.
As soon as you could kill a white conservative, you put a bullet in her as fast as you could, and you belong in prison.
Yeah, I mean, but to me, the very idea that you want to, the other thing that drove me crazy too were just like the athletes that came out, and all the stuff that they were saying. Once again, the reemergence of social justice, talking about the racial inequality and all these things like this. But as you were just kind of mentioning, I mean, what the heck happened, last May and, all during last summer? We had a lot of blacks all over the country that were protesting either George Floyd and all these things. but they were really rioting. I mean, they were burning businesses, they were destroying businesses, they were looting, they were stealing. Except for those, like that crazy guy who stole the podium. I mean, there was some chaos, but it wasn't to that same level as last summer. You don't have
jerks carried away, right?
Yeah.
This was the equivalent of drunken fraternity house stuff, right? Yeah. This was not this is not the coordinated evil, hiding bricks on the street so you could throw them at cops and stuff like that the leftists did all last year.
Right. No, I mean, it was extremely violent. I mean, the people who, who were demonstrating and rioting last summer, I mean, they came weaponized with something. Our people were not coming in there with that generally in mind. And so, what are they carrying? Maybe a poster or something?
They came to hear a speech.
That's right.
They didn't came to attack anything. I mean, the vast majority of that crowd.
They wanted to be a show of force so that for those people who voted, to uphold the Electoral College vote and everything like that, is that when and if they walk out of the Capitol, they would
show support.
They could say, hey, look, we're out there, we don't agree with this. Just remember us, that no matter what, Trump has got an immense amount of support. Just something that's really kind of incredible to me about how he has reshaped things in terms of that. But these comparisons, take a look at the images from last summer, compare them to even last Wednesday. As bad as last Wednesday was for a lot of things, it was not last summer.
It wasn't the women's march. It was not, the foul mouth, just utterly trash of that day, right? It was not all the other Trump protests and the first impeachment and the Kavanaugh hearings and the Mueller release of the Mueller report and the day Mueller testified on Capitol Hill. It was none of those. This was a one-time, one-off thing, right? And it's being built into like the biggest, assault on democracy. It was no assault on democracy. Right. You were trying to influence part of the electoral process, and they did not succeed. Right. And they did not convince them to do what they wanted them to do. And you know what Trump said, if you think about, what did Trump say to the crowd? He said, go home. Right. He said, look, go home. This is over. Right. And what did they do? They went home. Right. There's no 10 days of this hasn't kept on. Right. Like Black Lives Matter, that's still going on in Portland. They're still burning stuff down out there, right? This didn't go on. This ended Wednesday. This was all over in about 4 hours, right? The whole thing from the start of Trump's speech to the end of the problems in the Capitol is about 4 hours, right? Not 4 days, not 4 weeks, not 4 months, 4 hours, right? And so, the scale of it is quite a bit different. If we want to put people on trial for being seditious and anti-American and so forth, we got a lot of people we can try, and they don't have anything to do with the Trump administration.
Yeah, I mean, I really disagree with all these things about him inciting a riot and doing all these things, and this whole idea that this was supposed to be some kind of coup d'etat and whatnot. I mean, that is just all, to me, nonsense. I do think that the president has he's done this over the 4 years he's been in office, which is that he doesn't always forcefully come out and condemn things when he probably should have. And I think the first go around of this was not really a solid message, because he threw in this "we love you" thing in there. He later on, came out with a much stronger message, which was better. But that's the message he should have come out with first. And so I sometimes he does this to his own detriment. But in the end, I mean, you're right. I mean, this is not something that's long lasting. It has been quelled. The guy, I still think about this guy who stole the podium. I find it to be somewhat humorous, but cheeky, stupid. I mean, the thing is that if you don't think you're going to get caught, and there was reports, and I didn't follow through with this at all. I didn't see this, but some friends of mine said that there were reports that he put the podium on eBay or something or other. I don't know. I mean,
he was not trying to get away with it.
And these people, a lot of people have been arrested. They've been arrested because they took pictures and put them on social media of sitting in an office or doing this or doing that. So they use social media to say, hey, I was there and I did this. But of course, if they did something that was technically illegal, your picture's out there in public, that is going to serve, they're going to be able to find you. They obviously weren't really trying to hide much. But what that guy did kind of reminds me, you talk about this whole drunkenness kind of behavior or whatever. It does remind me of my high school, the senior class, the annual prank was supposed to be go steal the Bob's Big Boy and then put it on the roof of the school. Okay, I was never part of that, but I think most of the senior classes actually did that because at the time we did have a big boy, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 miles away from the school or whatever, and somehow they managed to steal the big boy, and then it just magically appeared on the roof of the school. I have no idea how they did that stuff, but it's can't be done today because there are no big boys in my area. So your friend Bob has said here, no question about the double standards to be in comparing last Wednesday's events at the U.S. Capitol to those associated with the BLM movement since last May. So that's it. I mean, I think we're definitely in agreement. There's a lot of hypocrisy. There's a lot of double standards here going on with how these comparisons are. But it has fueled the liberals, it's fueled the media on these things. So it's led us to today's events, which are these the arguments, the discussion, and the vote that will take place about impeaching President Trump. Now, Nancy Pelosi had been trying, I don't know how hard she tried, but I mean, I guess publicly she'd been trying to urge Vice President Trump to invoke the 25th Amendment, which I think was a non-starter to begin with because that was more of the incapacity of the president and some other issues. It didn't. There's just no way it applied in this case. Right. And even if he did throw that out, Trump has a chance to answer. It wasn't going to go anywhere anyway.
Right. Impeachment doesn't apply either, but that never stopped him. Right.
No, right. It didn't stop. Look, it hasn't stopped him. She's named these managers, including.
What a crazy bunch.
I kind of wonder in these impeachment managers. When I saw the name that Swalwell was on this list, do you really want to put Swalwell back public? I thought they were trying to kind of brush him, shove him under the rug a little bit because of all the Chinese issues.
Because of the involvement with the Chinese spy. I don't know. Lies to his campaign, or the flatulence on TV. It's also there's some other. He's not the only crazy on there. Diana DeJet, Jamie Raskin's in charge. I mean, come on, right? Cicelyne from Rhode Island. These are nutbags. Madeline Dean. I mean, this is one of the angriest women ever in public life, right? She's just a big ball of bitterness, right? And these are the people that are going to, carefully consider these charges and whatnot. I mean, this is nonsense. These guys are on the moon,
No, I was going to say, I mean, if you thought the first impeachment was a sham, this is even worse.
Sham on steroids.
That's right.
And it's like, the thing is like these were carefully crafted solutions to potential very serious national problems, right? You had serious crimes by the president. You have a president abusing his power, on some kind of continual, regular basis. They are like, can we shoehorn this into impeachable, right? That's not, that is not a prudent use of power, right? That is just raw, majority forcing its hand down the throat of the minority, right? That's all that is. That is exactly what the founders did not want, but they don't, they have no concern about how much they abuse power. They have no concern about, American norms and truth. And I mean, it's really, they're disappointing, right? I know when I was a kid, I've been a conservative for a long, long time now. I did not need to get my first paycheck to realize how much taxes came out. I did not need to, hear from Ronald Reagan or any of that, right? It occurred to me very soon to align yourself with freedom and the people who most promote freedom. But, I remember Democrats, they looked at it differently, but they were taking a serious look. and their serious look considered, demanded some attention, right? This is just raw, governed by emotions. It's, Pelosi has been chumped by Trump the entire time he's been in office, right? Over the wall, over budget stuff. I think, the time that I always think about, the time that Kellyanne said something to her in some White House event. And she said, I talk to principals, I don't talk to staff. She never talked to Trump again after that, right? He said, okay, that's a good philosophy. So she was dealing with Steve Mnuchin for the rest of the time Trump was in office, right? He just didn't speak to her, because she wasn't his rank, in his view. So, a little spiteful, but, that is what drives Nancy Pelosi, right? If you think about it, like, why would she tear up that speech? What did that do for America? What did that do for her, for the Democrat Party? It was her getting back at Trump, right? Any way she can. And what she is desperate to do. Did you see on Twitter this week, they got Nancy loves Trump trending? It was like 140,000 tweets, right? And they showed all these pictures of it. That's the look of, and everybody was writing their captions of what what that picture was. I miss him so, and all this stuff. It was really funny. And it's, it's really, she's obsessed with Trump. She always has been. She's always known that, how you have those people that they just get the better of me, and there doesn't seem to be anything I can do about it, right? That's kind of her relationship to Trump. And it just makes her extremely bitter because she's used to winning, and, she's lost every match with him. This is her one last chance to save the day. Her last impeachment was laughed off the floor, so she's got one last chance to stick it to him. And the heck with what it does to America, the heck with what it does to Joe Biden, right, who's having some pretty deep second thoughts about all this himself, the heck what it does to, anything else. Because this is about Nancy getting back at Trump.
Right. All right. I'm gonna sneak in some more comments here from Bob, and then we'll continue this discussion. So going back, he says, end result equals even greater and deeper political and social polarization moving forward. Love the BBB label. That's definitely a keeper. And then he just said, I think Jonathan Turley's arguments against the snap impeachment are the most credible and sensible out there. So I haven't seen Jonathan Turley's remarks on the impeachment. I have seen, I have read what he had said previously after the election about President Trump and how he could leave a good legacy in terms of going forward, kind of going out on a high road and some of these other things, and other things like this. I'm sure that, I'm sure that Turley said some good things here about this, but it's revenge. It is just sheer nastiness. This is Nancy's last shot at Trump, and this is what it's really become. Is that the Democrats are basically taking their last shot. In what universe does this really make any sense? With now what we got a week to go before the inauguration to go and do this. He'll
be out of office before you can get it. Mitch said he can't even call it up till the 19th. They're not even back in session till the 19th. So, they're not going to do it in one day, right? So, and then he's out of office. And what's the point of impeaching him? The only power of impeachment is to remove the president from office. So if he's already out of office, it has no power. They can't bar him from running in 2024. They think they can, but they can't. So, it is just Nancy Pelosi's childish spite. There is nothing else to it.
Yeah, I think she wants Donald Trump to go out and will have recorded being the only president to ever have been impeached twice.
Right.
Everybody knows that President Trump will be out of office in 7 days, and so that the process or the purpose of the impeachment there's no bearing. It has no use at this point in time. So the Senate meets on the 19th. Even if they take this up, right now, they haven't certified the Georgia elections, right? As far as I know, that's supposed to go to Ken, and Kamala Harris isn't. She hasn't been sworn into office as a vice president, so she's you don't have a 50-50 Senate at this point. You don't have the people aren't in place to vote the way they need to vote anyway. As far as
it's a 2/3 vote too. You're not getting 67 votes.
Yeah. So
It's not happening.
It's just not happening. So it's such a colossal waste of time. I mean, Joe Manchin even thinks that this is kind of ridiculous, and I think there are a lot of other Democrats either that have probably privately said. Maybe there's some that have publicly said it. It's just here we have Joe Biden coming into office. Is this what you really want to have? Just having this after effect coming in here is that they're dealing with this. He's got other things he wants to accomplish. This just seems like terrible strategy, terrible ideas on the part of the elected Democrats to go and do this. Why do you want to saddle Biden with this?
Well, he's asked the Senate if it can work on impeachment and his agenda at the same time, right? And it's like, not really, right? Because, I mean, that's a showboat situation. They all got to be there. You can't say, well, I was off at the water resources hearing and, for New Mexican, well digging in New Mexico, right? When there was an impeachment hearing going on, they all have to be there. So the answer is kind of no. And the answer is probably, you're not gaining anything through this anyway, right? What is Trump? Trump was 50% on Rasmussen today, someone told me. Is that right? So, I mean, Trump's polling has not suffered from this at all, right? The people who are with Trump remain with Trump, which is something that all these Republicans who, they suddenly got this wisdom, that it's time to stand away from Trump and, back these reasonable sanctions against him. We're not voting for you anymore. We're not giving you money. You're not winning any elections, right? If you're ready to throw your political career away over this, have at it. But a lot of people will lose because of their failure to support the president in this.
Yeah, and
he's still the Republican Party, whether you like it or not, and he probably will be for some time going forward.
It does make me curious because I do think the Republicans, at least before all of this happened, were in pretty good shape, I think, to at least retake the House in 2022. But the party seems to be, very divided. There's some of the establishment types and the Trump types and things like that. And whether or not there's enough blowback on people who are standing up against Trump in this case and would vote for impeachment, will the voters in 2 years that are Trump supporters that happen to be in those particular districts, will they hold that against them and not vote for the Lynn Cheneys and whatever?
Right. I mean, they're going to get primaried, and they're going to have to spend a lot of money, to beat another Republican. And, then they will notice that those people are not supporting them. You're not going to get the people who go against Trump here are going to pay.
Now, I also noticed that I heard that Biden has been pushing the Senate to, I guess, confirm his security people, whether it's, it's the what is it, the DHS secretary and all these people, I guess before the inauguration is, because of the security issues on the Capitol after all of this. But I think that thing seems to be extremely overblown. I mean, they've done all this stuff, but in reality, I don't see any massive groundswell of people that are going to be racing into town to create some havoc on Biden's inauguration. I mean, I think they've had their say. They're not planning on coming back to town.
That's right. But see, they want to make it up and build this. Like you had AOC on there saying her life was threatened. Your life is not threatened. I mean, how dumb can you be? You just. So I mean, and that's where this is headed. Is like every histrionic fear that they can think of. Oh no, it's going to be terrible. And it's like there's, I guess there's somebody out there putting up posters or posters on the internet, memes or whatever on the internet. There's going to be some, big protests in state capitals and all that. None of the conservatives I know are participating or endorsing that action at all. Right. It's over. We're getting ready for, what really will be a dark chapter in American history. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that there may be some scattered protests in some capitals. But I'm definitely not hearing anything in Maryland. I I know a lot of extremely ardent, Trump supporters, and they would be the first to post those messages out. And I have not seen anything to that extent, and we're only 7 days away. And you would think that if that was happening, they'd be massing the troops now. And I've not heard anything. So I think you might get a few of these things here and there potentially, but by and large, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And the inauguration, the way it was already set up, I think it was going to have to be a very low key affair to begin with because of COVID restrictions and all these other things.
Right.
They were going to be extremely limited to what they were going to be able to do to begin with.
Right. And there was not going to be a march down Pennsylvania Avenue and all that. So it's unclear where all this trouble would get made. Everything that's always secured in Washington will be secured that day, probably even a little extra, right? And there won't really be the chance to do what they're, suggesting would be done.
Yeah, not that I want to really go off the reservation here, but I mean, I do feel something for a president getting inaugurated and not having all the pomp and circumstance that comes with that in this case. I mean, I was thinking, about inaugural balls and stuff like that. I mean, you can't gather for those things.
If I had a stolen car, I would not go wanting to drive it around all over the place, right? I'd just go where I needed to go.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I guess there'll be some TV things or something like that, and
I don't think that there will be any shortage of aggrandizement of the inauguration of Joe Biden or especially Kamala Harris.
Right. No, and it's we'll have to wait and see what happens, once the Senate convenes under Schumer's leadership eventually, and how this goes there, because I think Bernie Sanders is going to be the budget chair, and I guess he's already teased a bunch of things, about things going on there. How much he'll be able to actually push through a radical liberal leftist, tax agenda, because he's definitely a big tax the rich guy, but those are the people that create the jobs that run the economy. I'm not sure that the Joe Manchins of the world are going to be going along with all of those things.
Right. There's going to be some close votes on some of that stuff. I think Trump's tax policy, it will be hard for them to mess with a whole lot because it's just been so darn successful, right? You had, he improved household income about $5,500 per family in 3 years. Obama improved it $900 per family in 8 years. So, that's Trump was better, right? Rebuilt basically the manufacturing sector and the economy. We had 1.5 million more jobs than we had job seekers before the pandemic. Lowest unemployment in 50 years for women, lowest unemployment ever for Black, Latino, Black youth, minority youth, and overall, right? I mean, we never had full employment before. We've never had more jobs than people to do them before. With rising incomes and most of the increase coming at the bottom of the wage scale. I mean, what would you change there? What worries me now is you can already see energy prices creeping up again because, anticipation of new sanctions and so forth. So, I mean, energy is a big driver of the economy because it's in every product. It's required for the purchase of every product, and it's a regressive tax, right? It's harder on the poor than it is on the rich. So, when he does that, I mean, he's going to have some economic problems as a result. Gas is going to go back to $4 a gallon, $4 or $5 a gallon, right? Until we get someone who understands energy policy in office again. And, people are going to have to live with that. And, hopefully you can see that like the trade-off you think you're getting is not getting, right? We already are, the number one country in the world for reducing emissions, right? We don't have to change a thing to be number one, right? We are far ahead of all the people who remained in the Paris Accords, right? So, if we just take care of our business and just continue to build clean cars and, insist on the best of, insist on, people don't understand the more energy access you have, the less pollution you have because, you have more wealth, which promotes cleanliness, and you have more everyone can choose their cleanest supply. When they have all the supplies are available, price is not a factor, then people can say, okay, I'm going to live as clean as I possibly can, right? If price becomes a factor, then you're just shop for the cheapest one, right? The cheapest source, right? Other thing on that is like you see in a big move toward electric cars, and the electric people are coming out and saying, that's a good idea, but we do not come close to having enough electricity to power all those cars.
Right. I mean, you make some really good points here too, and something I hadn't really thought about in terms of the kind of the wealth effect and things like that. I mean, energy prices, they're tough. I mean, I think part of the reason that's happening here too is that when the market, whether or not it's Wall Street or the energy market, the traders, they look at now a Democrat, Congress, Senate, and president. They see a guy who has said, he's not going to be approving any more new fracking and all these kinds of things. So now you say, all right, our energy independence could be a little bit in danger here if we cannot be self-sustaining in that. So that is a potentially inflationary thing. They're seeing that the Democrats
also a potentially geopolitical mistake of epic proportions. But go ahead.
Right. So you have this. I mean, and Wall Street's looking at. They took off, after after all of these things happened here recently in the beginning of the new year, partially because they look at it and say, okay, the Democrats now, after the Senate runoff, they see the Democrats spending more money. So, Wall Street right now, they like that idea. They're not thinking about who's paying for all that spending and how it's going to be, that kicking the can down the road kind of scenario that we've had for a while. But so they like that, but that the specter of inflation, which will push up energy prices and push up costs of everything, that is coming back a little bit. We're going to start seeing that the interest rates, the Treasury yield it topped like 1%, which it hadn't done for quite a while after the pandemic. And those are all just kind of harbingers of what is looking for at the future in terms of what is our economy going to look like. And it could get a little bit dicey here. Biden he's inheriting an economy that has been working and getting better, but these lockdowns and all these things have put a kibosh on the growth aspect of it. And we know that Biden is a big national mask mandate guy, and I think he supports the fact that he doesn't want the spread, so businesses will have to take it on the chin. But we've had 110,000 businesses, according to Bloomberg, have already shut down. We can't afford a whole lot more businesses going out. Where are the people going to work?
Right, and the other thing is like that needs to be looked at, and now won't be because of the particular incuriousness of our friends on the left. But like, what we're doing is working, right? Which of these steps mean anything? Okay. So he's all on the mask mandate. And I read yesterday, what you've heard about mask is, catching coronavirus, stopping coronavirus with a mask is like trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence. Okay. I mean, that's the general wisdom, right? So it's worse than that. Somebody calculated it out, and like the actual size of the coronavirus and the actual size of the threading of the mask, and they said it would be the equivalent of going through a fence if the chain links were 14 yards apart. So I mean, we're talking a huge 14-yard wide hole that they can get through, right? When you're comparing those sizes. So are masks working? Not what 90% of the people who catch it say they were faithful mask wearers, right? So didn't help them. Are lockdowns working? Was Trump not right that Easter was have we really saved lives by not going back Easter like he said? I don't know. You show the places where people have gone back, like Florida, they have their statistics appear to be better than other people's, right? Getting out into it appeared to actually help the situation, not just not hurt it, but actually actively help it. So, at some point we need to say, okay, what of all this works? And now, the one thing that may save us is, Andrew Cuomo, of all people, who's probably performed worse than any leader in the political world, right, on the dealing with the coronavirus. His policies probably killed more people than any other government leader anywhere, right? Now says, hey, we got to reopen because the state's running out of cash because the businesses aren't open, so there's nobody paying taxes, right? So, some of that will force some normalcy. You'll get some normalcy because the states can't afford, it's getting to the point where they can't even afford their nonsense. So,
though I think one thing that will lead these particularly liberal, mayors and governors and whatnot not to have either local lockdowns or statewide lockdowns is the fact that because the Democrats control all the levers here, that if they want to release a ton of money to the states for COVID relief, they're going to be able to do this. The Republicans are going to have a hard time stopping that in the Senate now, though that's what they should be doing. And McConnell was responsible, for trying to say, look, no, the irresponsible decisions of these mayors and these governors, for closing down businesses should not be rewarded with money. Right. To solve their problem. They created a problem, and they should be able to solve it. So you mentioned Florida. I mean, Florida, I think, Governor DeSantis, I think that they looked at the risk reward ratio and they said, no, it says we think that we have to do this. Otherwise, Florida relies a lot on tourism. I mean, Walt Disney World is still kind of a ghost town, but at least it's somewhat open. Right. But you have places that just can't open. And I will admit, it breaks my heart to read stories, in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere about people who were working and then were forced out of work, that were in the hospitality industry and the restaurant, that because, the politicians said, no, we have to shut down. For the life of me, I don't know how many of the businesses in Maryland after this, no in-person dining, how they can survive, something that's probably going to go on probably till at least March. This is tough. Small businesses are just taking it on the chin, and it's just not fair.
Yeah, it's not. There's decreasing evidence that it's doing any good, right? It'd be one thing we could say, okay, but this is working, right? And when we stopped doing it, things went haywire, but that's not the case. Things are going haywire without that.
So I want to, something I meant to, I was going to move this up the list a little bit too, which was one of the other things about the fallout from all of these things, which I just totally skipped it for some reason. So this goes hand in hand. It's just basically this whole idea about the deplatforming of President Trump in essence, right? So this is an issue that is huge. The companies, as private companies, they can set their rules and they can do whatever they want, but it has created this whole huge discussion about.
It's not necessarily true. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about companies who have taken that stance that, hey, we're private, we can do whatever we want, but they control something. The public, they're the only public access to something. Then they can be held responsible. They can be ordered to give, access to whoever wants it.
Well, it does.
They told Trump he could not.
32, I think, and say, are you now becoming a media company too?
Right. Because you're saying people can't be on it. You're editing, right? If you're editing, you're a media company.
Right.
Okay? They've been editing all along. All the little content notes and all that kind of stuff, should have been cracked down on at the time, right? You're just putting stuff up, or let people sue them, right? Let Trump sue them for denying him access. I think that would be a great case. It'd be fun to hear, right? There was something on Twitter this morning, and it appeared to be attributed to Jack Dorsey, and saying that their efforts at editing and determining what was safe and true and so forth have failed, and they are going to get out of that business and quit having the fact checkers and quit attempting to determine what's true and what's malicious and so forth. And he said, we're not going to allow doxing and, things that personally endanger people and so forth, and things that aren't legal. But, we're going to let people talk to each other, and we're going to get out of the way, right? Because us getting in the way hasn't done any good. I have not chased down whether that's legit, but if it is, I think that's a major step in the right direction and a major realization that these guys have really gone too far with this, right? their whole thing was, and it worked in the situation of Biden, right? Because, it was not told to the American people that Biden and his son were being investigated by the FBI when the FBI publicly acknowledged this 6 days before the election. There was just a complete agreement of mass media not to tell the American people that one of the candidates was under the look-see of the FBI and, quite possibly could be forced out of office, should all this come to fruition, right? So, you're not telling us things that we need to know to make these decisions, then, I mean, that's your role as a press. Now, you don't have to do it, right? But, when you're talking about silencing people, all I say is, I guess there's other thing on the internet now. It's like, how do you tell who the good guys or the bad guys are? It's like whichever one has the Nazis with them, they're the bad guys, right? To me, whichever one has the suppresses information is the bad guys. The good guys never suppress information. They want the information out there. They want everyone to see that they're doing the right thing, right? So only the bad guys ever suppress information, and that's going on all over the place. So draw your own conclusions, right?
I mean, even the media, I think they're somewhat, have a conundrum with the whole thing, with all this stuff with Trump, because by deplatforming him, in essence, you don't know what the guy's saying or doing or thinking. I mean, the media made a living for 4 years off of what he said on Twitter and whatever. Right. And you take his message off, and they're like, well, now what? I mean, they don't have anywhere near as interesting news to report to begin with. And besides, just not just the Hunter Biden stuff, which they did, which Twitter and these guys did a terrible job handling, but what about other world leaders that have said worse things, far worse things than Trump has on Twitter, but they're still doing fine. I mean, right. They're not applying this formula equally at all.
Yeah. What do you think when somebody like Angela Merkel comes out and says, what you guys are doing to Trump is ridiculous. She's no friend of Trump, right? So, what do we say to that? Do we think that's appropriate? Is that cool? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and as Bob is just pointing out, certainly not a good start to the week for Facebook or Twitter on Wall Street, and right. There has been a financial fallout, at least for market value. I don't know what the total is, but they have fallen back at this point in time. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a long-term thing there, but the other thing too was just this whole deplatforming this thing on Parler. Now, I am not a huge fan of Parler. I just think that I didn't think Parler was all that good to begin with, but the whole Amazon thing about pulling them off, under the terms of service, that seems to be a little bit of a weak argument, because
that's censorship straight up. Yeah, I think they misrepresent what was on Parler. Parler was merely Twitter for people who were tired of getting suspended on Twitter, right? And some of them, they get suspended because they say legitimately crazy stuff, right? But most of them, it's just scrapping with liberals on there. Oh, you're suspended for 7 days for something he did, but you don't get to appeal. And another thing that was mentioned in this thing that Dorsey supposedly did was, they were going to simplify the appeal process. This is like now appeal. I got suspended one time from Twitter, and I appealed it, and the appeal wasn't heard till the sentence was over. Right, I served the whole sentence, and they still had to prove the appeal. So or even ruled on it, even said no. So. And obviously they had that set up to where, they didn't really care whether you got your appeal heard or not, So I don't know. I think that, the Parler thing, mostly when I went on there was Laura Loomer and Dan Bongino and Levin, right? Mark Levin. And that's the only ones that I ever saw actually putting anything on Parler. So, I don't really miss it. It's on my phone. I didn't really go there a whole lot, but what bothers me about it is not the loss of Parler, but the way that liberals were allowed to just say, "Oh, this is a huge threat to our freedom and our safety," and people just took it off. Remember, all the people, when they start taking your freedoms, the reason is always to keep you safe. It's not safe to let those people say those things, right? So then they start removing freedoms to keep you safe, right? Don't keep me safe. I'm in charge of keeping me safe, right? Let me have access to the info, and I'll decide what I need to know to keep safe.
All right, 2 minutes, trying to wrap up.
2 minutes. On Monday night, the Alabama Crimson Tide won their 14th national championship. They beat Ohio State 52 to 17.
24. Yeah, that was a
24. That's right. Yeah, but they dominated from the get-go. Seventh national championship for Nick Saban. I guess pretty close to having to say he's the greatest college football coach of all time. If not already, he says it's Bear Bryant. Which was interesting to me. But I read something today about him. He said he was he got out of college. He played at Kent State in Ohio, and he was done with football. He wasn't in love with it, didn't want to make a life out of it. But his wife had another year of school, and they had agreed, their parents let them get married while they were in college, under the proviso that they would graduate from college. They would not leave college till they had both graduated. So she had another year. So the football coach at Kent State, who was Don James, who went on to a Hall of Fame career at University of Washington, won a national championship, went to him and said, be a grad assistant. He goes, well, I don't want to be a grad. I don't want to be a grad student, and I don't want to be an assistant, and I don't want to have anything to do with football. And he's like, well, you have to be here for a year anyway, so why don't you try it? And so he tried it, and, the rest, as they say, is history. So pretty good little story on
I love that story. That's a great story.
Yeah.
It's because it's not easy to get much out of Nick himself if you talk to him, apparently. So
yeah, I'm a big Nick fan. I'm going to show something on TV here if I can do it without ruining our broadcast. Can you see that sheet? Nick Saban's The Process.
Yeah.
On my wall there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'm a big Nick fan.
Well, he has been an amazing coach. Just a lot of talent. And I think the Journal had an article the other day about recruiting, and they were talking about Saban and I think Urban Meyer and others, how they changed the landscape on recruiting because instead of staying local, they started getting these national recruits. Right. And that has changed, their fortunes tremendously by they have people from all over the country that come to these schools. And I mean, who in the heck doesn't want to play for an Alabama or Clemson or a powerhouse team?
One of LSU's players last year on the great national championship team, he said that, Saban recruited him real hard. He said, he told me, I can either go to Alabama or lose to Alabama 4 times.
That's funny. All right. Well, we're done today. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I think it was a great conversation as usual. Please always stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world, particularly at this time. Remember that don't let all this other nonsense get in the way here. We do live in the best country in the world. And as always, also, God bless America. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.